Hi, good morning. Welcome back. Today on the Goldwing 1500 project, cam belt change. Now with 24,000 miles on the clock, we're certainly changing these purely for good measure. And I would imagine that more cam belts get changed on Goldwings for good measure due to time passing than they do for mileage itself. Now the service intervals for these cam belts is 100,000 miles, would you believe? That's insane. And not many motorcycles actually do 100,000 miles, certainly not in a timely fashion where they've not perished first. Now this bike's 33 years old and for most of its life it's sat still, so that's the issue here. Those cam belts aren't worn in any way. I don't expect to find any wear on them or the pulleys whatsoever, but that rubber is 33 years old and it's in a dry environment which dries the rubber out. You get dry perished tyres and they just have to be replaced because that's when that rubber can crumble and break up and the consequences of a broken cam belt can be catastrophic on your engine. So here we are today, a cam belt change on a Honda GL 1500 Goldwing. Now, if the business of changing cam belts on a Goldwing sounds familiar at this channel, then you've obviously been watching more than 4.5 years because it was that long ago that I did a cam belt change on my last Honda 1500 Goldwing. Now, that video has been quite successful at this point, just over 200,000 hits, and it's still growing. Now, we won't make this into a tutorial. It's just part of the wider project, and we hope you enjoy it. Now, as part of this job involves turning the engine over manually, it's prudent to take the spark plugs out to relieve all the compression. And the spark plugs on this bike, like so many bikes, live down inside a deep hole where little bits of gravel and debris and snails and sycamore seeds and whatnot can gather just because they do. And then when you take the spark plug out, those items can fall down into the engine. And if it's something hard, like a piece of gravel, then that can wreak havoc on the top of your piston, your cylinder head, and also literally destroy your engine, potentially. So take an airline and blow out those holes so everything's spotlessly clean and the surrounding area so that when you're working with the spark plugs out, nothing can fall in the holes. Obviously, cover the holes up. Right, now given the condition of this poor old bike on the outside, it's a fantastic discovery to find out that inside the engine, inside this sealed casing, is absolutely spotless. Just look at that. That's like brand new in there. And that's encouraging because it means that in the rest of the engine and transmission inside, probably the carburetors as well, that's going to be what it's like. Absolutely spotless, like brand new. Extremely encouraging. The same cannot be said, however, for the belts. They're quite dusty, they're a little bit worn, and definitely past their sell-by date. Very worth changing. All right, I'm not making this a tutorial, but just to briefly explain, the engine on these turns clockwise in relation to the direction of travel, as indicated by an arrow on the crank pulley. So your first job is take a ratchet and a socket, turn the engine over manually to align the crank pulley and the cam pulleys so they all reach their timing marks and everything is perfectly aligned. Then you can take the belts off. We just crack the tensioners off. Lovely. Now the next thing, with the inner of the two belts, much as there's plenty of slack, these two pickups are about 3mm away from the crank pulley, so there's no gap there to get the belt out and the new one in. So these have just got to be undone and just moved to one side. Red thread lock. We'll clean those and replace the thread lock. Now this little clamp inside here comes out, usually like that. Right, now we've got some room like that to get the belt out. And there it is. That dusty old thing. Well, we'll just check these tensioner pulleys are in good condition. Hold the bracket still, give the wheel a spin, no rumbling or rattling, and no play whatsoever. Perfect. Same on this one. Hold it still. Lovely. Perfect. And looking at the surface of them, you'll see little marks on them where the old belts have deposited rubber on there. So just use a bit of IPA, or you can use brake cleaner and clean all that off. Get them nice and spotless. Just clean off any residue like that. Right, the first belt in. Here we are. Seat the crank pulley first, and then pull the top line of the belt as tight as you can to line it up with the crank pulley. There. So the top line is straight. Put tensioner down, and then slip the belt up over it. A little bit of a wrestle, but purely because you want to be as gentle as possible with that belt. Pull the bottom run taut, find the tooth, there it is. Gently over. That's it. Let's give these a clean. That's it. Right, we'll just set the deflection. A bit of load. 5 to 7 millimeters of movement. It's perfect. Snip that up. Right, far too much slack. Just gently underneath there. Gentle twist, lift, tensioner wheel. Perfect. Yeah. Check that again. Right, that's the belts tensioned and everything torqued up. Now before you do anything else, like put the cover on and whatnot and button everything up, just turn the engine a quarter of a turn and then back on itself a quarter of a turn. Then check those alignment marks again. If you've got it even so much as one tooth out on either of these pulleys, then it will show. When you come back to that point, it will be out slightly, so then you know to pull them off and do them again. So let's just check that. Quarter of a turn one way, then the other. Right, quarter of a turn. One way. And back. All right, that's the belts changed. The tensioner pulleys checked and they're absolutely perfect. Everything tensioned correctly and everything torqued up and thread locked. Now, let's just put the cover on. There, cam belts replaced. Great peace of mind, truly is. Especially looking at the state of them, they're absolutely awful. Dusty, really floppy and soft. I do not think they would have lasted too much longer. Happy. Now, at this point, that's only about the middle third of the job. You still got to get everything off in the first place. Now you would have to put everything back on, put all the fluids back in and go for your test ride. That's probably a day's work at least. If you booked in to have this done with a garage, you probably pay 6 to 8 hours to have a job like this done. So that's why it's quite expensive on labour. But you can actually see that changing the belts themselves in real time is probably about half an hour, literally, to change those belts. It's getting into them and then reversing out of it afterwards. But thankfully, I haven't got to do any of that because this is a project. It's ongoing. I can leave it in that condition. And in the next video, we'll put some new plugs in it. We'll put the oil filter back on, put the oil back in. We'll fit our new water pump that's finally arrived and put the coolant in, and then we're ready to carry on and start refurbishing the exhaust headers. We'll see you then.